Something happened to me, and to this day I don't know if I managed to get out of there. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that for 6 years, I worked as a nurse at St. Helena Psychiatric Hospital in the mountains of northern Oregon. An isolated place. Too quiet. The kind of silence that presses on your eardrums. I was good at what I did. Controlled. I never lost my temper with patients, even the most aggressive ones. They would scream, spit, scratch the walls, and I would just smile with that professional tone and say, "Everything is fine. You are safe here." But in the last 3 months, something has started to change. First came the insomnia. I simply couldn't sleep. I would stare at the ceiling of my apartment until 5 in the morning, feeling the weight of something invisible on my chest, as if someone were watching me through the darkness. Then came the lapses. Small things at first. I'd forget where I'd left my keys. I'd lose track of what I was thinking mid-sentence. Once, I found notes in my handwriting that I didn't remember making. Strange things. Loose phrases like, "he knows," and "don't trust Dr. Cardoso." I attributed it all to exhaustion. Night shifts wear anyone down, right? But then, the patients started looking at me differently. Not with fear or anger, with recognition. It was as if they knew me from somewhere else. One of them, Mr. Howell, a 60-year-old man with advanced dementia, held my wrist during my nightly medication and whispered, "You still haven't realized, have you?" I laughed nervously. I pulled my hand back. But those eyes, God, those eyes weren't demented at all. They were lucid, deep, sad. The following week, I received an email from Dr. Cardoso, the hospital's clinical director. Subject, routine assessment, mandatory attendance. I found it strange. I had never been through a routine evaluation before, but I obeyed. I entered his office at 11:47 p.m. after my shift. The office was dark, lit only by the lamp on the desk. He smiled when he saw me. That smile I recognized from the charts of manipulative patients. "Sit down," he said calmly. I sat down. He opened a folder. I couldn't see what was written inside, but I felt my stomach churn when I realized that the photo stapled to the first page was of me. "Have you been sleeping well?" he asked, without taking his eyes off the paper. Not a lot to answer. He nodded, as if he already knew. "And the memories? Have you had difficulty separating what is real from what is not?" Guided. "What are you talking about?" He closed the folder slowly. He looked deep into my eyes. "We need to talk about the incident." My heart raced. What incident? But before he could answer, everything went black. I woke up with a metallic taste in my mouth. My eyes took a while to focus. The light was different, not the harsh, fluorescent light of the hallways, but something softer, yellowish, hospital-like. I tried to get up, but my body felt heavy, slow, as if something had been given to me. That's when I realized I was lying in a hospital bed. Not my bed, not my apartment, and worse, I was wearing light blue pajamas, the same pajamas that patients wore in the long-term care ward. My heart started beating erratically. "No, no, no, no!" I looked around. The room was small, claustrophobic, peeling white walls, a barred window, a heavy metal door with an acrylic peephole. Everything exactly like the rooms I knew. But on the other side, I tried to get up again, but my legs were trembling. I staggered to the door and slammed it shut. "Hey, is anyone there? This is a mistake." Footsteps echoed from the back. The acrylic hatch slid open, and a face appeared. It was Beatrice, a nurse on the night shift. I knew her. We worked together. "Beatrice, thank God. Please get me out of here. I don't know what happened, but—" "Good morning," she said in that calm tone. Professional. The same tone that he used it with the patients. "Beatrice, it's me. You know me." She smiled gently. That smile I saw on the faces of nurses when they dealt with confused patients. "I know who you are. You've been here quite a while. My blood froze. No, I work here. I'm a nurse, just like you. She tilted her hair, as if she were listening to a stubborn child. You seem confused. That's normal after sedation. I'll ask Dr. Cardoso to come talk to you later, okay? Beatrice, for God's sake! But she had already closed the visor. I recoiled, breathless. My mind was in complete panic. It made no sense. I remembered working there. I remembered the faces, the names, the routines. I remembered leaving the hospital, driving to my apartment, having coffee alone every morning. Or perhaps he remembered. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to organize my thoughts. That's when I saw the bedroom door for the first time. I really did see it. It had a small metal plate attached to it. Bed 7 patient. My full name. Admission, March 14th, 2019. 6 years ago, I felt the ground disappear beneath me. No, this isn't real. This cannot be real. But there was more. Below my name, in smaller letters, diagnosis. Dissociative identity disorder with recurrent psychotic episodes. My hands were shaking so much I could barely hold them. I got up again, stumbling to the small shelf beside the bed. There were a few personal items, things that I recognized. A battered book that I was sure I had at home, a mug with the hospital logo, and a photograph. I picked up the photo with trembling hands. That was me, younger, smiling alongside other employees at the hospital's end-of-year party. But when I looked behind the photo, there was another one, stapled to it. It was me again, same angle, same party. But in that photo, I was wearing the blue patient pajamas. I dropped the photo on the floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the silence. And it was at that moment that I heard it. A voice, weak, coming from the next room. Welcome back. I froze when I heard that voice. I pressed my ear against the cold wall. The sound was muffled, but unmistakable. Someone was on the other side, in bed 6. Who's there? I whispered. Silence. Then, the voice again. Hoarse, tired. You still don't understand, do you? They do this to all of us. Do what? What are you talking about? Low laugh, no humor. They make us forget. They make us believe we're employees, but we're not. We never were. My stomach churned. That's a lie. I remember working here. I remember the patients, the shifts, everything. Of course he remembers. Yes, the voice replied, almost with pity. Because you spent so much time observing that you ended up believing you were on the other side. That's how it works here. The mind protects us until it doesn't anymore. I stepped away from the wall, breathing too fast. My vision was blurry. My chest ached. No, I'm not crazy. I'm not. The door opened suddenly. It was Beatrice again, accompanied by a nursing technician I didn't recognize. They entered with that trained posture, calm but alert, ready to intervene if necessary. You need to calm down, Beatrice said softly. I know you're confused, but let's talk calmly, okay? I'm not confused, I screamed, but my voice came out cracked, desperate. I work here. You know me. I serve you in the cafeteria. I do the night rounds. Beatrice exchanged a quick glance with the coach. You think you work here, but this is part of your framework. You've created a parallel reality to cope with the trauma. What a trauma, she sighed, as if she'd had this conversation 1,000 times before. The incident, don't you remember? That word again. Accident. Images began to pulse in my mind. Fragments, flashes, a dark hallway, screams, blood on the floor, someone on the ground, motionless, my hands covered in something red. I shook my head violently. No, that's not real. That didn't happen. You were in crisis, Beatrice continued. You hurt another patient. Seriously. Since then, you alternate between being lucid and absent. Sometimes you believe you're an employee, other times you know the truth. Lie! The coach stepped forward, but Beatrice raised her hand. Bring his medical records, she said calmly. A few minutes later, he returned with a thick folder. Beatrice opened it in front of me. She turned the pages slowly. Each one was like a stab in the heart. Photos of me during crises, medical reports from years ago, notes on dissociative episodes, delusions of identity, and resistance to treatment. And then, she turned to a specific page. A photo of me, in uniform, smiling, next to patients, but underneath, stamped in red, photographic record of therapeutic activity. Patient assumes caregiver role as a defense mechanism. My legs gave way. I sat up in bed, trembling. No! Beatrice knelt in front of me. She held my hands. You are safe here. We take care of you. We always do. Hot tears streamed down my face. Not tears of sadness, tears of pure terror. Because for the first time, I wasn't sure about anything. I spent the next few hours, or days, I don't know anymore, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. I tried to reconstruct my memory, piece by piece. But the more I thought, the more jumbled things became. I remembered serving Mr. Howell. Or was it Mr. Howell serving me? I remembered filling out medical records. Or reading my own medical record being filled out. Memories began to duplicate themselves, to contradict themselves, as if two versions of me coexisted in the same space. Nurse, patient, nurse, patient. Which one am I? The door opened again. This time it was him, Dr. Cardoso. He came in alone. He sat in the chair next to the bed, crossing his legs in that relaxed posture he always had. Or that I thought he always had. How are you feeling? He asked. I don't know anymore. Yes, I replied, and my voice came out hollow, distant. He nodded, as if he had expected that response. Can I show you something? Before I could answer, he placed a brown envelope in front of me. Inside were photos, lots of photos. I grabbed the first one. It was me, in uniform, smiling, next to Beatrice and other nurses. Date in the corner, June 12th, 2021. I'll turn to the next one. It was me again, same day, same party, but wearing blue pajamas, lost in thought, someone holding my shoulder, as if guiding me. What? How is that possible? You took these photos on the same day, Dr. Cardoso said calmly. At the same time, depending on your mental state, you saw yourself in different ways. My breathing was short. Irregular. I kept flipping the photos, more duplicates. Me in a lab coat, me without a lab coat, me with an employee badge, me with a patient identification bracelet. And then, the last photo. A hallway. Dark puddles on the floor. And in the center of the image, a body, covered by a blood-stained white sheet. My stomach churned. Who is it? Dr. Cardoso did not look away. Marcus Delano, 34 years old, patient in Ward B. He died 3 years ago. Heavy silence. You killed him. The words fell like lead. No, I don't. You were in crisis. He tried to calm you down, and you reacted. It wasn't your fault. You weren't in control. Images exploded in my mind. Hands around a neck. Muffled screams. The weight of a falling body. And then, nothing. Empty. I wouldn't do that. You don't remember because your mind went blank. And in its place, it created a new identity. That of someone who cares, who controls, who would never lose control. Tears streamed down my face. I couldn't stop. So, I've never been a nurse. Dr. Cardoso tilted his head. You were there. For a few moments. We allowed you to help with the therapeutic activities. It calmed you down. It gave you purpose. But always under supervision. Always within the ward's boundaries. I looked at him. I really looked. And for the first time, I saw something strange. Your badge. It was upside down. What? Before I could finish, the door opened again. Beatrice rushed in, but she seemed different. Her face was pale. Tense. Doctor, we need you. Now. He stood up immediately. But before leaving, he looked at me one last time. And she smiled. It wasn't a professional smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something I didn't. The door closed. I was alone again. And then, I heard it, from the hallway, muffled voices, but one of them was unmistakable. It was my voice, yelling, "Let him go, he's not a patient, he's an employee." My heart stopped, because it knew I was here. Who was out there? I jumped out of bed abruptly. My body was trembling, but I couldn't stay there, not anymore. I went to the door and pressed my face against the acrylic window. The hallway was empty, too quiet. Then I heard it again, my voice, coming from somewhere far away. "I work here. You're making a mistake." That was exactly what I had screamed hours ago, word for word, tone by tone. I tried the doorknob. To my surprise, it was unlocked. The door opened with a low creak. I walked out slowly, barefoot, feeling the cold floor beneath my feet. The corridors were lit by the same yellowish light, everything exactly as I remembered it. But at the same time, different. The doors to the other rooms were ajar. I peeked in as I passed by. Bed 5, empty. Bed 6, empty. Bed 8, empty. All empty. But then, I arrived at bed 3, and I stopped, because inside, there was someone. It was me, lying in bed, motionless. Eyes open, staring at the ceiling. My heart was pounding in my chest. I took a step back, but bumped into something solid. I'll come. It was Beatrice. But her face was wrong, expressionless, like a mask. "You shouldn't be out of the room," she said in that calm voice. Who's in there?" She didn't answer. She just grabbed my arm tightly and started pulling me back. "No, let me go." But others appeared. The coach, Dr. Cardoso, other nurses I recognized, or thought I recognized. They all had the same empty face. They dragged me back to bed 7. They threw me on the bed. Beatrice prepared a syringe. "No, please. I just want to get out of here." Dr. Cardoso leaned over me. His eyes were sunken, tired. "You can't leave, because you never got in." I felt the needle pierce my arm, and everything started to blur. I woke up with a metallic taste in my mouth. My eyes took a while to focus. The light was different, fluorescent, harsh, hospital-like. I was standing, wearing a white lab coat, badge hanging around the neck. Nurse, night shift. I looked around. I was in the hallway of Ward B. My hallway, the one I patrolled every night. Everything was normal. I took a deep breath. I tried to calm down. It was a nightmare. That's all. A horrible nightmare. I walked to the nursing station. Beatrice was there, filling out medical charts. "Hey," she said, smiling. "Did you sleep well?" "I think so." She nodded and went back to work. Everything's normal. But then, I saw something. On the clipboard she was holding, a name. Bed 7, patient, my full name. My blood froze. I looked at my badge again. The letters began to get jumbled in order to reorganize themselves. Patient, bed 7. I blinked. It's back to normal. Nurse, night shift. I blinked again. Patient, bed 7. I felt the ground disappear beneath me. Beatrice looked up and smiled. That professional smile, practiced. "Everything is fine. "You are safe here." And that's when I understood. I never left. Perhaps there never was an outside. Perhaps I am just one among many. Employees who forgot they are patients. Patients who forgot they are employees. Trapped in a never-ending cycle. A ward that treats its own employees. And nobody notices. Nobody. Until they realize. I looked down the hallway. Other nurses were walking, making rounds, chatting. How many of them were like me? How many were imprisoned without knowing it? Beatrice touched my shoulder. "You have a new patient in bed 9. He just arrived. He's confused. He says he works here." My stomach churned. What's his name?" She checked the clipboard, and when he said the name, I recognized him. It was someone I knew. Someone who worked with me. Or that I thought who was working. "Do you want me to go with you?" Beatrice asked. I looked at her, at the hallway, at my name tag, and then I smiled. That professional smile, practiced. "No need, I'll take care of him. Because that's what I do. I'll take care of it. I always took care of it, and I will continue to take care of it until someone wakes me up, if that's even still possible. If you listen to the end, you're already one of us. Subscribe so you don't miss the next whisper." Something happened to me, and to this day, I can't understand it. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that that night, I was alone, completely alone, and that should never have been a problem. I've been working as a nursing technician for 4 years, night shift, Ward D at St. Mary's Hospital, somewhere forgotten in rural Ohio. Palliative care. It's the kind of place where people come to wait, not to get better, just wait. I chose the night because it's quieter. Fewer families crying, fewer goodbyes, fewer people looking at me as if I could make a difference. I do my job. I administer medication, change IVs, note vital signs. I keep everyone comfortable until they don't need me anymore. That night began like any other. I arrived at 10 o'clock at night. Dr. Patel was finishing her shift change. She seemed exhausted, as always. She handed me the cases. 18 patients, no serious complications expected. Routine. "Anything. Wake me up," she said, before disappearing into the break room. I was alone in the nursing station. The L-shaped corridor stretched out before me, lit by those dim fluorescent lights that constantly buzz. Some were flickering. Maintenance promised to fix them months ago. I grabbed my clipboard and started the first round. Bed 1, Mrs. Ethel, 86 years old. Terminal lung cancer, sleeping, weak but stable breathing. Bed 3, Mr. Armando, 92, heart failure, snoring softly like an old engine. Bed 7, the young woman, 23 years old, leukemia. I never knew her name properly. She rarely spoke. But that night, she was sleeping too. Everyone is asleep. And that was the first strange thing. Normally, there's always someone awake. Someone asking for water. Someone groaning in pain. Someone calling for their mother, their child, for God. But that night, absolute silence. Just the hum of the lamps, the occasional beep of a heart monitor, and my own footsteps creaking on the worn linoleum floor. I returned to the station at 11:30. I wrote everything down. Normal vital signs. No incidents. Everything. Perfect. Too perfect. I should have realized it then. I should have sensed that something was wrong. But I was tired. I'm always tired. So I just sat down, drank my reheated coffee, and waited for midnight. When the clock struck midnight, I started the second round. That's when I realized they were no longer sleeping. They were all sitting on their beds, perfectly upright, eyes open, fixed on the ceiling, and none of them None of them were looking at me. I stopped in the middle of the hallway. My heart skipped a beat, that kind of irregular pounding you feel when something doesn't make sense. But my body had already sensed the danger before my head. I looked at bed number 1. Donna Ethel was sitting, not reclining, sitting, spine straight, hands on the covers, eyes open and fixed on some invisible point above her. "Mrs. Ethel," I called softly. Nothing. I walked towards her. My footsteps seemed to echo louder than they should have. "Mrs. Ethel, are you all right?" I placed my hand on her shoulder. Her skin was cold, not freezing, just cold. She didn't react, didn't blink, didn't move her head. Just kept looking up at that damn damp-stained ceiling. I turned on the bedside lamp, nothing. I waved my hand in front of her eyes, nothing. My stomach tightened. I left there and went to bed. 3. Mr. Armando, same thing, sitting, looking up, motionless. "Mr. Armando, sir, can you hear me?" Nothing. Bed 5, bed 7, bed 9, all the same. 18 patients. 18 people sitting in their beds, staring at the same point on the ceiling, as if they were watching something only they could see. And the silence. God, the silence was deafening. No moans, no sighs, no movement, just that heavy, oppressive stillness that seemed to suck the air from my lungs. I ran back to the infirmary. I grabbed the emergency flashlight and tested Donna Ethel's pupils. Normal reaction, normal pulse, normal oxygenation. But she wasn't there. I don't know how to explain it. Her eyes were open. Her heart was beating. She was breathing. But it was as if there was no one inside. I tried Mr. Armando. Same thing. The young woman in bed 7. Same thing. That's when I heard it. Or rather, I felt it. It wasn't a sound, not exactly. It was more like pressure in the air. As if something was vibrating at a frequency that my ears couldn't pick up, but my whole body could feel. I looked at the ceiling. There was nothing there. Just the white panels, stained with dampness, with the fluorescent light flickering occasionally. But they were all looking that way, to the same point. I slowly backed away, trying to control my breathing. My chest was tight. Cold sweat trickled down the back of my neck. Is this some kind of collective delusion? I whispered to myself, as if speaking aloud could restore some logic. But I knew it wasn't. Mass outbreaks don't happen like that. Not at the same time. Not with people in different terminal stages, with different diagnoses, with different medications. I grabbed my cell phone. No signal. Damn. The hospital always had problems with the carrier on the 3rd floor. I tried the gas station's landline. Deadline. Okay. Calm down. I took a deep breath. I'll wake Dr. Patel. I left my post and walked quickly down the corridor toward the break room. I glanced at the beds as I passed. Everyone is still watching. All properties. I opened the door to the room. Dr. Patel was lying on the sofa, with her back to me. Dr. Patel, nothing. I approached and touched his shoulder. Doctor, please wake up. Something is wrong with the patients. She didn't move. I felt panic rising in my throat. I turned her around. Her eyes were closed, but she was breathing. Slow, but strange breathing. Very controlled. I shook her. Nothing. Shit. I ran back into the hallway, and that's when I looked at the digital clock above the nursing station, 03:17. I blinked. What do you mean? 3 in the morning. Had so much time passed, and then everyone turned their heads. At the same time, in my direction, my whole body froze. 18 pairs of eyes fixed on me. 18 heads turned at the same angle. 18 blank expressions. None of them blinked. I took a step back. My leg was shaking so much I almost gave way. I grabbed the edge of the nursing station counter to steady myself. What? My voice came out hoarse, broken. What are you looking at? No response, just those eyes, fixed, penetrating. And then, very quietly, almost imperceptibly, a murmur. It came from all of them, at the same time, the same frequency, the same intonation, like a choir whispering a word I couldn't understand. My heart pounded in my chest. Cold sweat trickled down my back. "Stop it!" I yelled, and my voice echoed down the empty hallway. "Stop!" But they continued. The murmur grew, slow, steady, like a rising tide. I tried to move, to go around the gas station to run to the stairs, but my legs wouldn't obey. It was as if my own body was fighting against me. I took a deep breath, forcing air into my lungs. Okay, you're having a breakdown. This isn't real. You're too tired. Mrs. Ethel tilted her head to the side, slowly, like a curious bird, and she smiled. It wasn't a human smile. It was too wide, too stretched, as if the muscles in her face were being pulled by invisible threads. I took another step back. Then Mr. Armando did the same. He tilted his head. He smiled. One by one, like falling dominoes, they all made their move. Heads tilted, impossible smiles, and that murmur. Now I could hear it. One word, repeated, whispered. "He is." My blood ran cold. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "No, that's not happening." I turned around and ran. I ran toward the stairwell door at the end of the hallway. My footsteps echoed loudly, desperately. I could feel the sweat sticking to my shirt's back. I arrived at the door. I pulled the doorknob. Locked. What? I pulled again and again. Open! Open, damn it! It wouldn't move. It was a door that never locked. Never. It stayed open 24 hours a day. It was the emergency exit. I banged on the door with my fists. Is anyone there? Is anyone there? Nothing. The murmur behind me grew louder. I turned slowly. They were still there, sitting, looking at me, smiling. And then, the young woman in bed 7 stood up. She shouldn't have been able to stand. She was too weak. She had been dying for weeks, but there she was, standing, barefoot. Hospital gown swaying slightly, as if there were a breeze I couldn't feel. She took a step toward the hallway, then another one. His movements were stiff, mechanical, like a puppet being pulled. I pressed myself against the door. "Stop, please, stop." But she kept walking. And then Donna Ethel got out of bed. Mr. Armando as well. One by one, they all began to stand up. Patients who couldn't walk. Patients connected to monitors. Patients who needed help even to sit up. Everyone stand up. Everyone's walking. Towards me. I looked around, desperate. The hallway window, reinforced glass, but perhaps... I ran up to her. I grabbed the nearest chair and hit her with all my might. The glass did not crack. I hit it again and again. Nothing. The murmur grew louder, clearer. "Stay, stay, stay." I dropped the chair. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. They were closer now, forming a semicircle around me. Wide smiles. Empty eyes. The young woman was ahead. She stopped a few steps from me. And then, slowly, she raised her hand. He pointed upwards, to the ceiling. They all pointed. I didn't want to look. I didn't want to. But I looked. Here you go. Something moved in the shadows between the ceiling tiles and the fluorescent light. It wasn't a defined shape. It was an absence, a distortion, as if reality were being folded, torn. I felt an overwhelming pressure in my chest. My vision began to blur at the edges. I fell to my knees. The young woman moved closer. He leaned in. His face was inches from mine, and she whispered, in a voice that wasn't her own, You've always belonged here. The lights flickered, and they erased it. If you've listened this far, comment, I heard the whispers. Total darkness. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it echoing in my ears. My breathing was rapid, gasping, and uncontrolled. I couldn't see anything, nothing but a thick, almost solid void. But I knew they were still there. I could feel it, their presence all around me. Too close, too silent. I tried to crawl backward, but my hands found something cold. A wall, or maybe a bed. I couldn't tell. Please, I whispered in the dark. Please, let me go. The murmur returned. Lower now, but present. As if it came from inside the walls. He is. And then, a light, weak, flickering. The emergency light above the stairwell door finally came on. I was able to see it again, and I wished I couldn't. They were closer, much closer, forming a tight circle around me, their faces illuminated by the red emergency light, shadows dancing on their features, smiles still stretched, eyes still empty. But now, they were no longer standing still. They were swaying, back and forth, slowly, in sync, like algae on the ocean floor, moving with an invisible current. I tried to stand up, but my legs wouldn't respond. It was as if the entire weight of the world was on my shoulders. The young woman took another step forward, so close I could see the details, the sickly pallor of her skin, the dark veins beneath the surface, her cracked lips. She opened her mouth, and something came out. It wasn't a voice, it was a sound, deep, vibratory, like a buzzing coming from inside her. I felt it in my ribcage, in my bones. The others started doing the same. Everyone opening their mouths, everyone making that impossible sound. The pressure in my chest increased. It felt like something was crushing me from the inside out. I put my hands to my ears, but it was no use. The sound was inside me. "Stop!" I yelled, but my voice was drowned out by the buzzing. And then, the distortion in the ceiling began to fall, slowly, like black oil dripping, but it didn't fall. It floated. It descended in a controlled, deliberate way. I couldn't take my eyes off it. It had no form. It had no face. It was just empty, a hole in reality. And looking at it, I felt something horrible. I was being watched from behind, not for the patience, because of that. Something old, something that shouldn't exist. And I knew, with a visceral and terrifying certainty, that it had always been there. Not that night. Every night. Observing. Waiting. Tears began streaming down my face without me realizing it. Not from sadness, from pure existential terror. What do you want?" I managed to whisper. The young woman tilted her head, as if she were hearing something I couldn't hear. Then she spoke, but it wasn't just her voice. It was a chorus, multiple voices overlapping, male, female, young, old. "You know what we want." I shook my head in despair. "No, I don't know. I don't know." She smiled even wider. If that was even possible. "You always knew." The distortion was now just a few meters above me, so close that I could feel its presence as an absence of heat, as if everything around it was being sucked in. My vision started to blur, dark spots at the edges, dizziness. I was losing consciousness. And then, in the last second before fainting, through their eyes, through that thing on the ceiling, I saw the hallway, but not as it was. Just like he always was, full of shadows, full of presences, dozens of them, hundreds, figures standing beside each bed, watching, waiting, and me. I was there, standing in the middle of them, looking down, for my own body lying on the floor. I couldn't scream. I simply closed my eyes, and I let the darkness take me away. I woke up to someone shaking my shoulder. Hey, are you okay? I opened my eyes slowly. Daylight streamed in through the hallway windows. Natural light, warm, real. Dr. Patel was crouched beside me, her face worried. Lucas, what happened? You were passed out on the floor. I blinked, confused, disoriented. I looked around. The hallway was normal. The fluorescent lights were off because the morning sun illuminated everything. The linoleum floor was clean, no strange shadows, no distortions. And the patients. I looked at the beds. Everyone is asleep. Mrs. Ethel was snoring softly. Mr. Armando was lying on his side, covered up to his neck. The young woman in bed 7 was lying down, eyes closed, breathing weak but steady. I don't... My voice cracked. Dr. Patel helped me sit up. You're pale and sweaty. When was the last time you ate something? I couldn't reply. My head was throbbing. My whole body ached as if I had been running for hours. I tried to explain, but the words were jumbled in my mouth. Everyone was awake, watching. They spoke to me. Dr. Patel frowned. Lucas, you work too much. How many hours did you sleep this week? No, you don't understand. I raised my voice, desperate. They were standing, all of them, walking. And there was something on the ceiling, something that... Hey, calm down. She put her hand on my shoulder. You had a breakdown. It happens. You need to rest. I shook my head, trying to organize my thoughts. Collapse. That was it. It had to be that way. I was exhausted. I hadn't slept properly in days, weeks, maybe. I think you're right, I murmured, rubbing my face with my hands. Dr. Patel smiled reassuringly. I'll ask someone to cover your shift tonight. Go home. Get some sleep. Real sleep. She helped me up. My legs were still weak. I looked at the beds one more time. Everyone is sleeping peacefully, like always. Okay, I agreed quietly. I'm going home. I picked up my things at the infirmary. My backpack, my keys. I looked at the digital clock above the counter. 06:42. Time to go. I walked down the hallway toward the stairwell door. The same door that had been locked the night before. I pushed the doorknob. It opened effortlessly. Of course it opened. I descended the stairs slowly, holding onto the handrail. Each step echoed in the concrete space. I reached the ground floor. I crossed the lobby. The night security guard waved to me, half asleep. A quiet shift, he asked. I forced a smile. Yes, no problem. I left the hospital. The cool morning air hit my face. The parking lot was almost empty. Just a few cars in the early morning. Mine was there, alone under a tree. I got into the car. I closed the door. I rested my head on the steering wheel. You're okay, I whispered to myself. It was just a breakdown, that's all. I took a few deep breaths. I put on my seatbelt. I started the car. I looked in the rearview mirror before reversing, and I froze. In the back seat, there was nothing, but for a second, just 1 second, I thought I saw someone sitting there, looking at me, smiling. I shook my head. Tiredness, just tiredness. I left the parking lot. The road was empty. No cars, no movement. I turned on the radio to clear my head. Static. I changed the station. More static. I hung up. I drove in silence. But the more I drove, the more something bothered me. Something is wrong. Something that didn't fit. I tried to remember when I had entered the hospital the previous night. 10 o'clock at night. As always. Or had it been 10? I tried to remember the way there. the road, the traffic. But I couldn't. It was as if the memory was hazy, blurred, and the more I tried to focus, the least I could remember. When was the last time I left the hospital? Yesterday morning. Or rather, how long have I been working this shift? 4 years. But when was the last time I took a day off? I couldn't remember. My heart started racing again. I pulled the car over to the side of the road. I picked up my cell phone. I looked at the date, and my blood ran cold. The date was wrong. I couldn't be right. Because if it were, I had been on that shift for 3 days. I grabbed my wallet. I looked for my hospital ID badge. The photo was mine, but there was something strange about it. My eyes, they were empty. My cell phone rang in my hand. An unknown number. I answered without thinking. Hello? Silence on the other end. And then a murmur, short, distant. He is. I dropped my cell phone. I looked in the rearview mirror again. They were all in the back seat. Mrs. Ethel, Mr. Armando, the young woman, sitting down, looking at me, smiling. And in the reflection of the glass, behind them, behind me, the hospital. I was still in the hallway. I had never gone out before. I looked at my hands. They were still gripping the steering wheel. But when I looked again, they were holding the clipboard. I was at the nursing station. The clock showed 3:17, and all of them, they were looking at me, because I've always been here, from the beginning. Something happened to me during my last shift, and to this day nobody believes it. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I worked for 4 years at St. Agnes Memorial Hospital in a forgotten suburb of Ohio. It wasn't a glamorous place, peeling walls, a constant smell of cheap disinfectant, and that flickering fluorescent light that nobody ever bothered to change. I used to work night shifts, from 11 at night until 7 in the morning. Nursing technician and, when necessary, security guard. You learn quickly that hospitals at night are different territories. The silence is heavy, the corridors seem longer, and there's always that patient who screams alone in the dark. But I was used to it, or so I thought. It was a Tuesday early November. I arrived for my shift and Karen, the supervisor, called me even before I clocked in. "I need you in Pavilion D this week," she said, without looking me in the eye. I frowned. "Pavilion D? Wing deactivated. Structural renovation postponed. I just need someone to stay there overnight. Security protocol, nothing serious." "Nothing much." She said this while looking at the clipboard. "But are there patients there?" "No, it's empty. They just patrol every 2 hours and write it down in the report. No problem." It wasn't easy, but I needed the overtime. I grabbed the keys, a heavy, rusty bunch, and headed for the east corridor. I knew the whole hospital, but I'd never been to that wing. There was an access door at the end of the second floor, past the fire escape. The plaque on the wall was faded, Pavilion D, restricted access. When I opened the door, the air changed. It was colder, not like air conditioning, but as if the place breathed differently. The smell was of old ether, mold, and something slightly sweet that I couldn't identify. The lights worked, barely, flickering occasionally, creating long shadows on the hospital green walls. The hallway was about 50 meters long, doors on both sides, all closed, no windows with lights on, no sound, absolute silence. I walked slowly, just to check. I looked through the small, reinforced glass window of the first door. Dark. I tried the second. Dark too. All empty. In the middle of the hallway, an old wheelchair lay overturned on its side. The wheels still wobbled slightly, as if someone had just pushed it. But there was nobody there. I felt it for the first time there. that heavy feeling in my chest, as if the air were watching. I returned to the first aid station, a small table with an old telephone and a plastic chair. I sat down. I wrote in the report. 11:15 p.m., first round. No incidents. The first night passed without incident, but when I left in the morning, I swore I heard a door creak behind me. By the second night, I didn't want to go back anymore. It wasn't something I could explain. I spent the whole day thinking about that ward. The smell, the silence, the wheelchair. I tried to convince myself it was just tiredness. But when I arrived for my shift, my stomach was churning. Karen didn't even look at me this time. She just handed me the keys. I went down the east corridor again. The door to Pavilion D was exactly as I had left it, locked. But when I turned the key, I had the strange feeling that someone had just stepped out the other side. I went in. The air was even colder. My breath came out in thin clouds. I turned on the portable heater I'd brought, but it barely made a difference. It was as if the cold was coming from the walls. I made my first round. Everything the same. Doors closed. Darkness behind the glass. Wheelchair in the same place, but now facing the other way. I stopped. I looked at her. I was certain, absolutely certain, that the night before she had been facing left. Now she was facing right, toward the hallway, toward me. It must have been the cleaning staff, I said aloud, just to break the silence. But there were no cleaning staff. Karen had made that clear. The ward was isolated. I went back to the nursing station. I sat down. I tried to use my cell phone, but the signal was weak. The screen was flickering. I gave up. That's when I heard it. Steps. They weren't fast, nor were they tall. They were slow, dragging, like hospital slippers scraping on linoleum, coming from the end of the corridor. I stood up slowly. My heart was pounding. Is anyone there? Silence. Then, a door creaked, slowly, as if someone were opening it carefully, trying not to make a sound. I grabbed the flashlight. I walked to the middle of the hallway. All the doors were still locked. If there's anyone there, I'm going to call security. Nothing. But then I heard it again. Closer now. Footsteps. Definitely footsteps. Coming from behind one of the doors to my right, I approached. I looked through the small glass window. Total darkness. I placed my hand on the doorknob. It was cold. I turned it slowly. Locked. But the footsteps continued. On the other side, going back and forth. Like someone walking in circles inside the room. Who's there? The sound stopped. And then, a voice. Low. Hoarse. Whispering. My name. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a shout. It was as if someone were testing the word, experimenting, savoring it. I stepped back, quickly. I went back to my post. My breathing was heavy. I picked up the phone. I dialed reception. Karen, there's someone in Pavilion D. What? There's nobody there. I heard it. Footsteps, a voice. She sighed. You're hearing old pipes. This building is over 60 years old. Relax. Karen, I heard my name. Silence on the other end. Do your rounds and write it down in the report. If there's a real problem, call security. She hung up. I stood there, staring down the empty hallway. I decided to investigate. I went into the file room at the end of the building, a cramped little room with rusty metal filing cabinets. Most of the drawers were empty, but one wasn't. I pulled it out. Inside were old medical records, yellowed papers, names I didn't recognize, dates written by hand. And then I saw something that made my blood run cold. A form with the admission date, March 12, 2026. I read it again, 2026. In a few months, I'll turn more pages, other dates, 2027, 2029. All in the future. How was that possible? That's when I heard it again, higher now. Footsteps, several, coming down the hallway. Quick, I left the room. The hallway was empty, but all the doors, all of them, were slightly open, about 5 centimeters, enough to see the darkness behind it. And from each of them came a breath. I ran. I didn't look back. I went through the door, locked it, and went down the stairs, almost tripping. But as I was running, I could swear I heard footsteps following me. Third night, I tried to change departments. I spoke to Karen before my shift, explained that I wasn't feeling well, that the ward was making me anxious. She looked at me as if I were a child complaining about a monster under the bed. 2 more days and you'll be back on the main floor. Hang in there. 2 days. Just 2 more days. I went down to Pavilion D with trembling hands. This time I brought an old camera I found at home. If anything happened, I'd have proof. The door was unlocked. I was certain, absolutely certain, that I had locked it the night before. But there it was, ajar, as if someone had left or entered. I pushed slowly. The hallway was dimly lit. Half the lights were off. The wheelchair was no longer in the middle of the hallway. She was facing the door, as if she were waiting for me. My stomach churned. I turned on my flashlight and began my rounds. At every door I passed, I felt stares, as if there were faces pressed against the glass, watching me from the dark. I reached the end of the corridor. There was one last door that I hadn't properly checked yet. No number. Just a faded sign. Insulation. I looked out the window. Here you go. A figure, with its back turned, standing in the middle of the dark room, wearing an old, stained hospital gown. Long, disheveled hair falling over her shoulders, completely still. My heart raced. I banged on the door. "Hey, you can't be here!" The figure did not move. I tried to open it. It was locked. But I had the keys. I frantically searched until I found the right one. I turned the lock. I pushed the door. The room was empty. Nothing. No bed. No furniture. Just dirty walls and an unbearable smell of mold and something chemical. But I had seen it. I had seen someone there. That's when my cell phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out. I had accidentally taken a picture while running the night before. Opened the gallery. The image was distorted, pixelated, but you could still see the hallway, and in the background, shadows. Several of them. Blurred figures. Standing, all looking directly at the camera. My hand trembled. I tried to zoom in. The image got worse. Interference, like static from an old TV. And then I saw something on the wall behind the figures. A sign. I zoomed in as much as I could. I managed to read, Pavilion D, Psychiatric Isolation Unit, closed since 1987. This place had been closed for almost 40 years. But I was here. I had the keys. Karen had sent me. Nothing made sense. I walked back down the hallway. Slower now, looking at every detail. The walls were scratched, fingernail marks, dark stains that looked too old to be just dirt. And then I heard it again. My name. But this time it wasn't a whisper. It was a choir. Several voices, coming from all sides. From the doors, from the walls, from the ceiling. They're all saying my name, repeating it, overlapping it. I turned to leave and saw it. Figures. At the end of the corridor. 3, 4, 6. Dark figures, without clear definition, moving erratically, as if they had no joints, as if they were made of smoke and shadows. I stepped back. I bumped my back on something cold. I turned around. The wheelchair was right behind me, and now, someone was sitting on it. A figure with its head tilted to the side. Empty eyes, mouth slightly open, motionless. I screamed. I ran. I went through the door. I climbed the stairs. I didn't stop until I reached the reception area. Karen looked at me, startled. "What was that?" There are people down there, lots of people, in Pavilion D. She frowned.
She picked up the phone. She called security. 2 guards came down with me. We opened the door to the pavilion. Lights on, everything clear. No wheelchairs, no figures. The guards checked all the rooms. Nothing. Karen looked at me with pity mixed with irritation. Go home. Rest. But before leaving, I saw something that no one else saw. On the hallway wall, right where I had seen the figures, there were handprints, dozens of them, pressed against the old paint.
They're all pointing at me. If this made you uncomfortable, wait for the next chapter. 4th night. I shouldn't have come back. But something inside me needed to understand. I needed answers. Before my shift, I went straight to the general supervisor's office. Not Karen, someone above her. A man named Dr. Brennan, who had been running the hospital for 15 years. I knocked on the door. He greeted me with a polite, tired smile. Can I help? Pavilion D, I said. I want to know the history of that place. The smile faded. He adjusted his glasses. Wall D? We don't have an active Wall D. I know, but he exists. I was there. Karen assigned me to keep watch. He opened the system on the computer. He typed. He frowned. He typed some more. There's no record of your assignment to a deactivated sector. And in our maps, there's no Pavilion D. I showed them the photos from my cell phone, the distorted images, the shadowy figures. He looked. He sighed. Are you under a lot of stress? Sleeping well? I'm not crazy. Nobody said that, but maybe you need a few days off. I stormed out, slamming the door. I went back to the pavilion alone. I needed real evidence. This time I took a better camera, an audio recorder, everything. When I got to the door, it was wide open. And all the bedroom doors too. All of them, open, parallel, like mouths waiting. I went in slowly. The smell was unbearable now. It wasn't just mold. It was decay, old, ingrained. I went to the first room. I turned on the light. There was a hospital bed, dirty sheets, yellowed, crumpled, as if someone had just gotten up. But the bed hadn't been there the night before. I was sure of it. I went to the second room. Same thing. Bed, sheets, pillow with a still sunken head imprint. Third room, 4th, 5th, all the same, all newly occupied. It was in the 6th room that I saw the mirror. It was on the back wall, cracked, foggy, but functional. I moved closer. I looked at my own reflection, and then she moved. Not me, the reflection. I was standing still. But in the mirror, my reflection tilted its head to the side, slowly, as if studying, and she smiled. I stepped back. I stumbled. I fell. The recorder fell out of my pocket. That's when I heard footsteps, coming from every room, quick now, desperate. The sound of bare feet hitting the floor, dozens of them. I got up. I ran into the hallway, and they were there. Shapes, but now more solid, more defined. Pale faces, sunken eyes, mouths open in frozen expressions of terror or fury. Some had marks on their necks, others, bandaged wrists. Old, stained hospital clothes. They came from all sides. I ran to the infirmary. I looked for something, anything. I found a forgotten folder under the table. Shelter, official documents, state stamps, date, November 1987. Quickly, incident report, Pavilion D, collective psychotic outbreak. 14 patients in experimental chemical restraint. Protocol failed. All patients entered a state of extreme agitation. Isolation measures applied. Patients found dead the following morning. Cause: asphyxiation, self-mutilation, cardiac arrest. Recommendation: seal off the building. Do not demolish due to structural contamination. My vision blurred. The voices were louder now, shouting, crying, laughing. I looked down the hallway. They were closer, looking at me, without blinking, and then I saw something that made me freeze. One of the figures was holding a medical record. He held it out to me, slowly. I picked it up with trembling hands. Shelter, my name, my date of birth, my photo, date of admission, November 28th, 2025. Today. No, that's not happening. The lights began to flicker. Sounds of old machines switching on, beeps from heart monitors, ventilators. The figures drew closer, and they started repeating it. My name, my name, my name. Like a mantra, like an invocation. I ran. I went through the door. I climbed the stairs. My body collided with someone. Karen. "What are you doing here?" she yelled. "They're down there, all of them." She grabbed my shoulders. "Listen, you haven't worked here for 3 days. You've been suspended. You're trespassing on the hospital grounds." "What?" "Security has already been called. You need to leave." I looked back, at the corridor that led to Pavilion D, and there, standing in the doorway, was a figure, looking at me, with my face, fifth night. I shouldn't have been there. Security had escorted me out. Karen had made it clear I was forbidden from entering the hospital, but something pulled me back. It wasn't curiosity, it was need, like hunger, like thirst. I entered through the emergency exit at 3 in the morning, silent, determined. I went back to Pavilion D. The door was locked, but I still had the keys. I'd forgotten to return them, or had I? I opened it. I went in. The hallway was different now, more alive. As if it were breathing. The walls seemed to pulse, slightly, like a slow heartbeat. I went straight to the archives. I needed to understand. I needed to know the truth. I turned everything upside down, folders, documents, papers forgotten behind drawers, and then I found it. A sealed envelope, yellowed, stamped, confidential, do not file. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a complete medical report, pages and pages, names, ages, diagnoses. Pharmacological restraint experiment, Pavilion D, 1987. 14 patients diagnosed with severe paranoid schizophrenia transferred to isolation. New medication administered. Compound Z47. Objective: to suppress acute psychotic episodes. I continued reading. Day 3. Patients present with temporal confusion. They report seeing future versions of themselves. They claim to be trapped in a loop of consciousness. Day 5. Patients enter a collective panic. They believe they are dead, but are still conscious. Attempts at self-harm to prove they are alive. Day 7. All patients found in a catatonic state. Vital signs ceased during the night. Exact cause unknown. It is recommended not to reopen the investigation. My stomach churned. And then I saw the list of names. I scanned the page. Patient 11. My name. But it wasn't possible. I wasn't born in 1987. I was 32 years old. I looked again. Patient 11, transferred from general ward, history of paranoia, chronic insomnia, social isolation, believes he works night shifts, denies being hospitalized. My hand started shaking so much that I almost dropped the paper. That's when I heard door opening behind me. I turned around. They were there, all 14 of them, standing still, staring. But now I could see their faces clearly. Young, old, men, women, all in stained hospital gowns, all with empty, moist eyes. And in the middle of them, me, my version, thinner, disheveled hair, pale skin, deep dark circles under my eyes. He took a step forward. He opened his mouth and spoke with my voice. "You still don't understand, do you?" I stepped back. "Understand what?" "You never left." "No. I work here." You believes who works here, just like I believed. And him. He pointed to one of the figures. And her. And all of us. The walls seemed to close in. The temperature dropped drastically. Compound Z47 didn't kill us, he continued. It trapped us. Trapped between being alive and being dead. Repeating, always. You come back, every night, trying to understand, trying to get out. No. I have memories. I have a life. Memories you created, to endure, to avoid going insane. He moved closer. He extended his hand, and I saw it. My wrist. With an old hospital wristband, faded, but still legible. St. Agnes Memorial, Pavilion D, 1987. No, no, I ran. I crossed the corridor. The figures didn't follow me. They just watched, with pity. I went up the stairs. I passed through the empty reception area, always empty, and exited through the main doors. The parking lot was deserted. No cars, no lights. I looked at the sky. No stars, no moon. Just gray, static darkness. I ran home. I opened the door. Everything was exactly as I had left it. But there was a door at the end of the hallway. A door I had never seen before. White, hospital grade, with a small reinforced glass window. I approached, trembling. I looked out the window. Here you go. A room, a bed, yellowed sheets, and me, lying down, motionless, eyes open and empty. I banged on the door. Wake up! Wake up! But the body on the bed didn't move. She just blinked, and she smiled. I stepped back. The door began to open slowly. On the other side, the corridor of Pavilion D. I realized then, I never left. And every night, I'll be back. Always. I requested a transfer the following morning. It was accepted immediately. Too easy. Now I work at a different hospital, different shift, different city. But every night, I listen. Footsteps in the hallway of the house. And there's a door at the end of the hallway that was never there before. I will never open it. But I know that one day, it will open by itself. And I'll be on the other side, waiting for myself.